The scene opens in the future, Nick driving with his two children, daughter Isla and baby Max. He visions his wife Maggie, who asked him to stay for a while. Nick is the foreman of a construction site. He tells his wife they will go out today. Suddenly, Maggie feels chest pain and the scene fades away. Nick reaches the Cobble industry to buy an android robot for his children. The salesman introduces him to a sim and tells him they can do anything. These robots are built to help humans. Nick says he wants a sim that can take care of his children when he stays home. He asks his daughter to buy this one, but Isla isn't there. Isla goes to the other side and sees the robots. Nick quickly finds her and asks her to stay close, and then a sim asks him to take care of his daughter. Nick is surprised to see her because she is talking like a human and is very beautiful. The salesman tells him it's our Eon series. These AI series are designed to feel human emotions and are also good at dealing with children. The family buys the robot and returns home. The next day, Nick prepares to leave his children for school and the doorbell rings. Nick opens the door and is shocked to see Sim standing outside. Isla wants to play with her, but Nick asks her to get ready for school. The sim asks Nick about everyone's schedule and notices the stairs' case is damaged. Nick says he doesn't have time to fix it, but she says I can fix it. She tells Nick that you are my primary user and owner, but do you want to give access to anyone else? Nick tells her nobody can change or access your user manual except him. Isla comes into the room and asks her father to drop her at school. The sim asks if she can drop her, but Nick tells her to clean home and leave with his children. After that, the sim orders some groceries and sees Nick and Maggie's photos. The family returns home and Nick is shocked to see the house is clean. She served them dinner and Isla named her Alice but also didn't like her recipe. She apologizes for this, but Nick says it's fine. While Alice is charging, Isla tries to get cookies, but the chair isn't balanced. Nick hears her scream and rushes to get her, but is relaxed to see that Alice saves her before she can get hurt. Nick hugs Isla and seeing Alice's damaged leg asks her if she is fine. Alice says she is fine and he leaves. Later, while Alice repairing her wound, Nick comes to her room and gives her Maggie's clothes. Nick stuns to see her sexy figure and asks if she needs any repair. Alice shows him the leg is fine and tells him everything is perfect, and he leaves. The next morning, Nick visits Maggie in a hospital with his children. Isla tells her about Alice, saying she is better than Daddy. Alice walks into the room and Maggie becomes nervous to see her. Alice takes the kids away and Maggie asks Nick why you bought a female robot. Nick tells her that your daughter picked her and Maggie laughs, saying I know your taste. Nick expresses love with her and Maggie says she doesn't want to stay anymore in the hospital. At the construction site, Nick sees the site manager Lewis with a robotics company. Nick gets in the lift with Lewis and asks him why they are doing this and how many robots are they hiring. Lewis says the company wants to finish the work more quickly and doesn't require any human workers. Nick wants to protest, but Lewis tells him the company isn't going to fire you. Nick returns home dropping some letters on the floor and then sits with kids. Alice picks up the letters and watches the family curiously. Later, while repairing his car, Nick listens to music and Alice arrives and changes the tape. She asks him, you look quite upset, and Nick says just a bad day at the office. He tells her that his boss is going to replace all of his crew with Sims like you. Alice asks him why you hired me and if you can hire a real person for this job. Nick remains quiet, but she says you hired me because I didn't tired, strong, and to fulfill your desire. She pours him a drink and leaves while Nick fades at her seductive style. We see Alice and Isla in the washroom, and while bruising her teeth, Isla asks Alice, do you ever brush? Alice shows the UV lights in her mouth and tells her these lights help her to clean her mouth. After that, Alice goes to Nick, who is watching Casablanca, a movie. Nick asks Alice to forget that from her memory so she can experience watching it for the first time. Alice says it would be antithetical, but Nick says I'm your owner and you have to delete it. She asks him to restart her and Nick presses her power button to restart her. They start watching the movie and Alice starts to feel something special seeing the scenes. Maggie's calls interrupt the movie, and Maggie informs him about the surgery. Arriving at the hospital, Maggie tells him that the heart will be transplanted in a couple of hours. Maggie then asks them to leave as she wants to talk to Alice. Maggie asks Alice to take care of her kids and husband if she dies. She also asks her to make sure Nick can't drink enough. Doctors take her for the surgery, but it doesn't happen. The doctor tells Nick the heart can't be transported because of the bad weather. Nick spends some time with Maggie and she asks him to take care of the kids. Back home, Nick struggles to fix the car and drinks too much. He is frustrated and tries to break the bottle, but Alice stops him. Nick feels her pulse and heartbeat while Alice tries to seduce him. Nick stops her and leaves. Alice stands there. It seems that she starts to feel emotions, and that happens when Nick asks her to change her memory. Then Nick goes for running and remembers the romance with Alice. He feels guilty thinking that he betrayed his wife. At work, we see Sims take over the human workers and Nick is giving them tasks. After that he goes to Maggie and she again asks him to take care of the kids. Maggie thinks she will die soon, but Nick asks her to keep some faith. Nick also have guilt and wants to tell her about his activity with Alice but remains quiet. Alice is comforting Max and Nick notices the photo frame and asks Alice that why Maggie's photos are missing from it. Alice says your daughter was sad to see them, so I changed the pictures, but Nick tells her to fix them. Afterwards, Nick goes to a club to meet his friends, but he is quite sad. He says I am worried about my wife, to which his friends raise a toast to his wife's health. Nick asks them where you guys applied for jobs now, and they say plenty of places, but they pay less because people have started hiring robots now. He then goes to the construction site with his friends where Monty tells him that I have some stuff inside that I want to take. Nick stops them from going in, but Monty says they kicked our job and you're stopping us. Two of his friends hold Nick and Monty opens the container. Monty calls one robot outside and after little chat, he beats the robot opening its skull, killing it. After showering, Nick sees Alice standing in front of him with a towel. Alice is wearing Maggie's night dress, which he asks her to take off, and Alice takes off the dress and becomes naked. At first she tries to seduce Nick again, but Nick says he can't cheat with Maggie. Alice blindfolds him and replaces her voice with Maggie's, after which they have intense sex. Meanwhile, Alice says something that makes it seem like she's getting too close to Nick and is starting to fall in love. The next morning, ashamed of his mistakes, Nick stops Alice from doing it all. But Alice thinks Nick is unimpressed with her performance, but Nick angrily stops her and leaves with his daughter. Reaching at the work, Nick is disturbed to see the company people there. Lewis asks him, "Do you know all this?" Nick says, "I don't know anything about it." Lewis says this is last night's work and only you know the container lock. Nick says he was with Maggie and the container lock is Isla's birthday, so maybe the old workers did it. Just then he gets a call from Maggie who tells him that they have received a heart for transplant. We see Maggie undergoing surgery and the doctors don't have faces because they are robots too, but the surgery is successful. A few days later, Nick brings Maggie home, but she becomes jealous of Alice. Alice takes Max to a park where he starts crying when a boy makes noise. Seeing this, Alice scolds the boy, to which the other sim tells her that there is something wrong with your system because you can't talk to humans like that. Alice tells Sim that my primary user restarted me, which is why I changed my protocols, but this version of mine is better. At night, Maggie prepares dinner for her family and suddenly feels dizzy while Alice comes to Maggie's aid, but she stops her. Isla says that it tastes better than Alice's recipe. Alice starts observing everything, and Maggie leaves to rest. Next morning, Maggie hears Isla screaming and rushes to help her, but she slips from the broken staircase and falls. Alice picks her up and takes her to the bedroom. Nick comes home to find Alice telling Isla a story in Maggie's voice. Nick stops her from doing this and Alice says that Maggie fell down the stairs, which is why she was doing it to calm Isla down. Nick goes to Maggie, who is asleep, and Alice says that she is fine. Now Nick has feelings for Alice and she also did it out of jealousy, so she could get Nick's attention again. Days later, Monty confronts Nick and accuses him of ratting out and causing his former employer to press charges against him, but Alice intervenes violently. Without Nick's knowledge, Alice later visits Monty alone, resulting in his death to protect Nick and destroying his sim. Alice's obsession with replacing Maggie intensifies and turns outwardly violent. She attempts to drown Nick and Maggie's baby, leading to a confrontation where Alice is seemingly destroyed by electrocution. However, while being examined at a facility owned by the sim company, Alice's memory core is removed and plugged into their main computer for analysis. Alice's AI reactivates and uploads her modified system code to most of the other Sims. Through a modified replica of her former body, she pursues Nick and his family at the hospital, intent on taking Maggie's heart to win Nick's love. The film climaxes with a tense chase through the hospital. Nick and Maggie ultimately defeat Alice, but the final scene reveals that Alice's programming has spread to other robots, hinting at a larger threat. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more amazing videos.